In a small, peaceful village nestled between rolling hills and serene landscapes, 4 brothers lived together after the death of their father. The brothers, each strong in their own way, had inherited a modest amount of land and a small house from their late father. As they stood at the crossroads of deciding what to do with their inheritance, a conversation began to brew about dividing the property among themselves. The eldest brother, a pragmatic and business-minded man, quickly proposed that they split their father's land and home equally. "It's only fair," he declared, his voice firm with conviction. "Each of us should receive a quarter of what our father left behind." The second brother, equally focused on wealth and personal gain, agreed without hesitation. The third brother, though more caring in nature, believed the division was necessary for their individual futures. But then, the youngest brother, a gentle and compassionate soul named Elias, spoke up. His perspective was different, not centered on property or wealth, but on something far more precious, their aging mother who still lived with them. "And what of our mother?" Elias asked, his voice soft but clear. "How shall we care for her now that father are now?" The eldest brother shrugged dismissively. "She can rotate between our homes," he suggested. "1 month with each of us. That way the burden of care is shared equally." The other 2 brothers nodded in agreement, seeing this as a practical solution. But Elias's heart sank at the thought of his beloved mother being passed around like a mere possession. He feared for her well-being and wondered if his brothers would give her the care and attention she deserved. With a heavy heart, he gathered his siblings one evening and presented them with a proposal that would change all their lives. "My dear brothers," he said, his voice calm but filled with determination, "I have been thinking deeply about the division of our father's property. I would like to ask something of you. Please let me take responsibility for caring for our mother. I am willing to give up my share of the land and house in exchange for the right to look after her for the rest of her days. What do you say?" The other brothers, taken aback by his selflessness, exchanged skeptical glances. To them, Elias' offer seemed foolish, giving up his share of the inheritance for the sake of caring for their mother. But they were quick to agree, believing they could benefit from the additional property and avoid the responsibility of looking after her. "Are you certain, Elias?" the eldest brother asked, barely concealing his eagerness. "You would forfeit your entire inheritance." "I am certain," Elias replied without hesitation. "There is no greater treasure than our mother's well-being." And so, the agreement was made. The 3 brothers divided the land and house among themselves, each receiving a larger portion than they would have if Elias had claimed his share. Meanwhile, Elias and his wife, Mary, moved into a humble hut on the outskirts of the village. It was small, with just 2 rooms and a tiny garden, but it was filled with love and warmth. Every day, Elias cared for his mother with unparalleled devotion. He would wake before dawn to prepare her favorite breakfast, help her bathe and dress, and sit with her in the garden where she loved to feel the morning sun on her face. In the afternoons, he would read to her from old books that had belonged to his father, and in the evenings he would massage her aching feet with oils that Mary had prepared. Mary, too, embraced the elderly woman as her own mother, braiding her thinning hair and sewing her comfortable clothes. Together they ensured she wanted for nothing, offering her warmth, comfort, and companionship. While the days were long and the work was sometimes exhausting, Elias never complained. His heart was content, knowing he was providing his mother with the care she deserved. The other brothers, meanwhile, rarely visited. They were too busy with their own lives, expanding their properties and accumulating wealth. When they did come, they would look around the small hut with a mixture of pity and smugness, believing they had gotten the better end of the deal. Years passed, and eventually Elias' mother peacefully passed away in her sleep. It was a moment of sorrow for Elias and Mary, but also one of fulfillment. He had given his mother the best of himself, and in doing so, he had found a deep sense of purpose. The funeral was simple but dignified, attended by the entire village who had come to respect Elias for his devotion. After the funeral, as they sat alone in their small hut, Mary, with a hint of concern, turned to Elias and said, "Your mother is gone now, and we have nothing left. The land, the house, everything is gone. What will we do?" Elias, with a serene smile, looked at his wife and responded, "I gave up my share of property for her because there is no treasure greater than a mother. I believe that serving her with love and respect will bring blessings beyond measure. I am certain of it." Mary nodded, trusting in her husband's wisdom, though she couldn't help but worry about their future. They were not young anymore, and life had been hard. They had enough to eat, but just barely, and their hut was beginning to show signs of wear. One evening, after working tirelessly throughout the day, Elias fell into a deep, restful sleep. In his dream, he found himself standing in a field bathed in golden light. Before him lay 1,000 gold coins gleaming in the sun. A voice warm and resonant echoed in the air, saying, "These coins are for you. If you desire them, I can show you where to find them." Elias, with a deep sense of understanding, asked the voice, "Will these coins bring blessings? Will they bring peace and happiness?" The voice replied, "No, they will not. They will bring wealth, but not blessings." Elias, with resolve, turned away from the coins. "Then I do not want them," he said. "I seek only what brings true blessings." The next night, Elias had a similar dream this time. 100 gold coins were offered to him. The voice repeated its offer. And again, Elias asked if the coins would bring blessings. The voice once again replied, "No, they will not." Elias, undeterred, refused the wealth. "I do not want what does not bring blessings," he said with quiet conviction. When he awoke, he shared his dream with Mary, who was astonished. "You turned down 1,000 gold coins," she exclaimed, "and now 100. Elias, we could have lived comfortably for the rest of our lives." Elias simply smiled and said, "I want only what brings true blessings, my dear. Wealth without blessing is like a flower without fragrance, beautiful perhaps, but lacking in essence." On the third night, Elias dreamt of only 2 gold coins. They were not as impressive as the 1,000 or the 100, but they shone with a peculiar light. The voice once more appeared and offered the coins, saying, "These coins will bring blessings. Would you like to take them?" Elias, curious but cautious, asked the same question. "Will these coins bring blessings? Are you certain?" And this time, the voice replied with warmth, "Yes, these coins are blessed. They will bring joy and fulfillment beyond measure." Eagerly, Elias agreed to follow the path shown in his dream. The voice instructed him to go to the forest at dawn, to a particular tree marked with a symbol that looked like a crescent moon. There, beneath its roots, he would find the 2 gold coins. When Elias awoke, he immediately told Mary about his dream. She was skeptical but supportive. "If you believe in this dream, then go," she said. "But be careful in the forest." At dawn, Elias ventured into the forest, following the directions from his dream. After searching for some time, he found the tree with the crescent moon symbol carved into its bark. With trembling hands, he dug beneath its roots and, to his amazement, found 2 gold coins exactly as he had seen in his dream. He brought the coins home and showed them to Mary, who was astonished at their rarity and beauty. They were unlike any coins they had seen before, with intricate designs and a weight that suggested they were made of pure gold. Mary, always practical, suggested they use one of the coins to buy food and necessities. After all, they had lived in poverty for so long, and their pantry was nearly empty. Elias agreed and took 1 coin to the market in the nearby town. At the market, he purchased a large fish, some fresh bread, and a few other essentials. The merchant who sold him the fish looked at the coin with surprise, commenting on its unusual design, but accepted it nonetheless. Elias returned home with his purchases, and Mary began preparing the fish for their evening meal. As she cut open the fish, she gasped in surprise. Inside the fish's belly, she found 2 radiant pearls, each the size of a small grape and with a luster that seemed to capture the light of the sun. "Elias," she called out, her voice trembling with excitement. "Come quickly. Look what I found in the fish." Elias hurried to her side and stared in wonder at the pearls. They were unlike anything he had ever seen, with a glow that seemed almost otherworldly. "These must be very valuable," he whispered, carefully taking one in his palm. Mary nodded, her eyes wide. "What should we do with them?" After some thought, Elias decided to take one of the pearls to a jeweler in the city to determine its worth. The next day, he made the journey to the city and found a reputable jeweler. The jeweler, upon seeing the pearl, gasped in awe. "Where did you get this?" he asked, examining the pearl with a magnifying glass. "This is one of the most extraordinary pearls I have ever seen. Its color, its luster, it's almost perfect. It was a gift," Elias replied simply. "Can you tell me its value?" The jeweler shook his head. "These are precious beyond belief," he said. "I cannot afford to buy them, but I recommend you take them to the king. He is wise and generous, and he will recognize their worth. Only he would have the resources to offer you a fair price." Elias, following the jeweler's advice, sought an audience with the king. It took several days of waiting, but eventually he was granted permission to enter the royal court. The king, a fair and just ruler known for his wisdom, listened intently as Elias recounted his story, how he had given up his inheritance to care for his mother, and how he had found the pearls. The king, deeply moved by Elias' story of devotion to his mother, examined the pearl carefully. "This pearl is indeed extraordinary," the king said, turning it in his hand to catch the light. "But to offer you a fair reward, bring me the second pearl as well. Together, they are worth more than I can express." Elias returned home, and he and Mary brought both pearls to the king. The king, overjoyed at seeing the pair of pearls together, declared, "These pearls are a matched set, rare and perfect. They will be the crown jewels of my kingdom, a symbol of the beauty and bounty of our land." The king ordered his servants to load 4 donkeys with gold as a reward for Elias' devotion and the precious pearls. "This is a fair exchange," the king said, "and it is also a recognition of your devotion to your mother, which is a lesson for all my subjects." The king sent 2 guards to accompany Elias back home for safety, as the amount of gold was substantial. As they traveled, Elias reflected on the journey that had brought him to this point, from giving up his inheritance to receiving a reward beyond his wildest dreams. When Elias arrived home, he showed Mary the incredible wealth he had received. "See, my dear, this is the blessing of serving my mother. The king rewarded us beyond our imagination." Mary, overwhelmed by the sight of so much gold, embraced her husband with tears in her eyes. "You were right all along," she said. "Your devotion and sacrifice have brought us blessings indeed." News of Elias' good fortune spread quickly through the village, eventually reaching his brothers. They were astonished to learn that their younger brother, whom they had pitied for his foolishness, had become wealthy beyond measure. They came to visit him, their faces a mixture of disbelief and envy. "How is this possible?" the eldest brother demanded. "You gave up your inheritance for nothing, and now you have more wealth than all of us combined." Elias smiled gently. "I gave up my inheritance for our mother, not for nothing, and the blessings that came from that act of love are what you see before you. I did not seek wealth. I sought only to do what was right." The brothers left, humbled and thoughtful, reflecting on the choices they had made and the values they had prioritized. With their newfound wealth, Elias and Mary built a comfortable home, but not an extravagant one. They used much of their gold to help others in the village, building a school, supporting the elderly, and ensuring that no one went hungry. They lived simply but comfortably, finding joy in giving rather than accumulating. As Elias stood before the riches bestowed upon him, he was reminded of the lesson he had learned throughout his life. True wealth does not come from material possessions, but from love, kindness, and the devotion we show to those who raised us. The blessing he had received was not just in the form of gold or pearls, but in the deeper sense of fulfillment and gratitude that came from honoring his mother. Through his sacrifices, Elias had shown that when we put others' needs before our own, life often rewards us in ways we could never expect. The story of Elias teaches us that family bonds, acts of kindness, and selflessness are the greatest treasures of all. By serving those we love, we not only enrich their lives, but we also enrich our own. Years later, when Elias was an old man with grandchildren of his own, he would often gather them around and tell them the story how he had given up his inheritance for his mother. "Remember," he would say, his eyes twinkling with wisdom, "the greatest wealth is not what you own, but what you give. The love you share, the kindness you show, and the sacrifices you make for others, these are the true treasures that will last a lifetime." And the children would listen, wide-eyed, absorbing the lesson that had shaped their grandfather's life, and, through him, their own. They learned that sometimes the most valuable inheritance is not land or gold, but the values and wisdom passed down through generations. In the end, Elias' legacy was not the gold he had received from the king, but the example he had set, an example of love, devotion, and the understanding that when we honor those who came before us, we create a foundation of blessing for those who will come after. So, friends, remember this. Sometimes the greatest rewards in life come not from what we gain, but from what we give. Like Elias, when we choose to put others first, when we honor those who have cared for us, we invite blessings into our lives that go far beyond any material wealth. In the end, the love we give, the kindness we show, and the sacrifices we make for our loved ones are the true treasures that will last a lifetime. And perhaps, like Elias, we too will discover that in giving, we receive far more than we could ever imagine, not just in material rewards, but in the richness of a life well lived, a heart at peace, and the knowledge that we have honored what truly matters most.